It was supposed to be a normal Thanksgiving dinner, until my sister stood up, raised her glass, and casually announced, "Mom and Dad are signing the house to me next week." It started like any other Thanksgiving. The entire family gathered at my parents' home, relatives spread around the dining table, kids on the floor watching cartoons, and the scent of roasted turkey filling every corner of the house. Conversations began predictably, covering politics, vacations, and Simeone's new promotion. Melissa, my sister, was her usual polished self, charming, confident, and always 2 steps ahead in every conversation. But as dessert was served, with pecan pie and coffee going around, she raised her glass to make a toast. "I have something to share," she said, her voice commanding attention. Everyone turned. "Mom and Dad have decided to sign the house over to me next week. It just makes the most sense, and they agree." Silence fell. Forks stopped midair. He looked at my parents, expecting a nod or confirmation, but they said nothing. Their eyes flickered between Melissa and the rest of us, seemingly unsure how to respond. Inside, my stomach twisted, but I remained silent. He could feel my hands clenching under the table. My brother raised an eyebrow, my aunt looked visibly surprised, and one cousin whispered something quietly into an tercere. But Melissa kept smiling, acting as if she'd just announced a weather forecast. He knew better than to challenge her in the moment, it would only fuel more confusion or push my parents further under her influence. After the meal, I slipped quietly into the kitchen and made a few notes on my phone, exact phrasing, dime, date, who was present. I knew something wasn't right. Estate discussions don't happen in a dining room after stuffing, they happen in offices, with clarity and witnesses. And something about the look in my dad's eyes told me he wasn't completely clear on what had been promised, or to whom. The day after Thanksgiving was quiet, too quiet. My parents had retreated into their usual weekend routines, avoiding any revisiting of the conversation. He paid them a visit under the pretense of helping put up holiday lights. But my purpose was different. Sitting with my dad outside as he tested bulbs, I said, "So, the house. What's happening there?" He looked at me, eyes narrowing slightly. "Melissa told you?" He nodded. She made it sound like it was all decided. He didn't nod. He didn't shake his head. She brought some papers over. Said it was just to avoid probate. That phrase again. "Distrust crept in, did you read them?" He asked. "Some of them. But it all looked standard." She said it makes things easier for everyone later. When I asked if anyone else had reviewed them, legal or otherwise, he admitted they hadn't. "Your mom and I aren't getting younger," he added, as if to justify the rush. Inside the house, I spoke briefly with my mom. Her story was just as disjointed, something about switching the deed, less taxes, no conflict. But the expressions on both their faces lacked certainty. They weren't lying. They were unsure. Which, legally, said more than any signature might. Melissa was always ahead of the curve, she likely had good intentions, or maybe mixed with convenience, but either way, I knew this was no longer a dinner table discussion. It was a legal maneuver. He thanked my parents, promised to help with exterior decorations next weekend, and left as soon as I could. On the way home, I called the local records office. He didn't explain much, only asked if any title transfers were active for their address. The clerk searched, hesitated, and said one was pending. A quitclaim deed had been filed, submitted digitally. That was enough for now. Waiting 48 hours, I had confirmation, a scanned copy of a quitclaim deed listing Melissa as grantee, my parents as joint grantors. 5. Pending notarization. It hadn't cleared yet, but it was close. The document showed Melissa's email as the preparer, using an online legal template. That alone wasn't suspicious, everyone used those websites now, but the timeline felt rushed. He knew I had to take action before it was finalized. He contacted an attorney I knew who specialized in estate and elder law. She offered a quick phone consultation. He forwarded the document and explained the announcement. Her response was swift, they're still the legal owners, but once that's notarized and submitted properly, reversing it becomes much harder. We need to determine consent and mental competency at the time of signing. That evening, I returned to my parents' home and talked gently, asking if they felt pressure. "We're just doing what your sister said made sense," my mother replied. She said it avoids fighting. The irony of that statement wasn't lost on me. He began documenting everything. Emails. Texts. My own recollections. He kept a private notebook with times and dates of conversations, including exactly what was said and who was present. He didn't accuse anyone. I didn't stir conflict. He just observed and prepared. He had learned long ago that when facts are lacking, emotion fills the space, and in courtrooms, emotion rarely wins. I also called my brother, briefly updated him, and asked only one thing: don't engage with Melissa about this yet. Let me see how far things have gone. A agreed. A was skeptical but trusted my instincts. The house we all grew up in wasn't just property, it was legacy. And if it was being handed off without full clarity, it wasn't just a bad idea. It might be legal manipulation. The following week, I requested a neutral family conversation, hoping to get everyone on the same page. He invited Melissa and my parents to a simple coffee meet-up in the sunroom. He led with diplomacy, not accusation. I just want clarity, I said. This is about preparation, I understand that. But we need full transparency, and a shared plan for what comes next. My sister appeared calm but guarded. It's already in motion, she said. The house becomes mine, but it stay in the family. You always be welcome. There is no need to overcomplicate it. He said nothing, letting the silence work. My mother looked uneasy. My father avoided eye contact. That's when I asked a direct question: did you both read and understand all the documents you signed? My mother said, I think so. My father said, Melissa explained them to us. That was not clarity. That was influence. He then asked, would you be comfortable going over them with an attorney of your choice? At first, no one spoke. Then Melissa interjected. I already checked with someone. They said everything we filed was legal. But that wasn't enough. Legal don't mean ethical. Legal don't mean consensual under informed circumstances. He repeated softly, we can do this correctly. Together. Or we can let things unravel. At that point, my father said, go ahead and get your attorney. I don't want any more confusion. That was all I needed. He decided to move forward, with caution, not confrontation. He would preserve peace, but I wouldn't stay silent. Melissa had always been clever. This wasn't new. But protecting family don't mean ignoring warning signs. It means facing them. He left that conversation with firm resolve. He then moved past the stage of doubt. Now I was focused on preparation. I reviewed every piece of documentation I could gather, emails from Melissa, text messages where she referred to finalizing things with the house, and even photos of the family kitchen where I noticed a folder marked title transfer, final copy sitting casually on the counter the day of Thanksgiving. He documented it all, timestamped every detail in a private digital log, and began researching elder consent requirements in our state. The law was clear: consent had to be informed, voluntary, and ideally witnessed by someone other than the direct beneficiary, especially when cognitive decline was part of the picture. That night, I drafted an email to a real estate litigation attorney and attached a folder of everything I had so far. Her response was professional and assertive: there may be grounds to halt the process if we move early enough. He recommended filing a temporary injunction to freeze any transfer until more investigation is done. That was my next step. I didn't want to fight Melissa. He wanted the process respected. He wanted my parents protected. And most of all, I wanted fairness, not favoritism wrapped in administrative lightning speed. He scheduled an urgent consultation, gathered all records, medical, legal, financial, and submitted a private affidavit to the court outlining concerns of possible undue influence. No slander. No assumptions. Used concern grounded in evidence. The attorney warned me, courts move slowly, especially in family matters. But given my parents were still alive and this was pre-transfer, the odds worked in our favor. This wasn't about stopping Melissa. It was about slowing the process until the facts could catch up with the signatures. And now, the clock was officially ticking. When the temporary freeze was granted, Melissa called me within hours. Her tone was calm, but sharp with edges. You filed something with the court? He confirmed. Yes, just a hold on the property transfer. Nothing permanent. I just want to be sure everything's truly agreed to by all parties. Her pause was long. This feels like you're accusing me of something. He replied carefully. I'm asking for accountability. That's not the same as an accusation. She sighed. You know how chaotic things get when everyone is trying to be involved. He was just trying to bring order. Again, the words she chose were telling: control framed as assistance. I didn't want to believe Melissa was acting with ill intent, but I couldn't pretend her track record didn't include plenty of subtle moves for personal gain, especially where parental assets were concerned. This wasn't her first attempt to act first and inform later. Later that week, Melissa emailed a revised explanation. To clarify, the plan was for me to handle the house just in my name, since I'm nearby. It would still be family-use property. That was a step back from outright ownership, but it still lacked legal limits or safeguards to ensure that promise meant anything enforceable. During a follow-up meeting with my attorney, she clarified how often these intentions disappear in probate chaos years later. Verbal consensus don't protect real estate holdings, she said firmly. If it's in her name, it's hers. Period. There is no, trust us, in land transfers. Hearing it like that made it real. I knew I wasn't overreacting. I was reacting to a quiet shift of power disguised as a helpful shortcut. And if I didn't act now, sorting it out later would be nearly impossible. While the freeze bought us time, it didn't buy us peace. The pressure had moved from hidden corridors to center stage. My father became unusually quiet during our regular check-ins, and my mother tried to convince me it wasn't worth the family drama. I understood their fatigue, but clarity wasn't a conflict. The line between meddling and protecting had never felt so blurry. I decided to take the next step. I requested an independent medical evaluation, not to declare my parents unfit, but to clarify their mental capacity at the time of signing any legal documents. I explained this to them gently over coffee. It's not about what's been done. It's about knowing what everyone really understood when that decision was made. Surprisingly, they agreed. That moment gave me clarity. They weren't hiding anything. They were swept along, trusting Melissa, not realizing what she was wiring into permanence. Melissa, however, didn't respond well to this update. Her email came the next morning, sharp and laced with legal boilerplate language she probably lifted from an online law forum. She warned me that family hostility puts strain on all of us, especially the ones who stepped up. But intentions, even good ones, don't erase the ethical obligation to inform, consult, and consent. I held my ground. The psychologist set evaluations for both parents within 2 weeks. My attorney recommended I avoid further direct conversations with Melissa and funnel all issues through legal pathways. I agreed. From that point forward, I documented every interaction. No more calls. Only emails. Only records. This was no longer a sister arguing with a sister. This was a legal advocate acting for the truth. Watching your family drift into paperwork they don't fully grasp feels like losing them twice, but doing nothing would have been worse. The evaluations were conducted in a calm, clinical setting. Standard memory functions, reasoning assessments, and comprehension maneuvers, nothing invasive. My father performed better than expected, though he occasionally drifted from present-date references. My mother was cooperative but lacked precision in explaining even recent events. The final report stated that while both could express opinions, there was mild cognitive impairment. The psychologist stopped short of declaring incompetence, but noted that high-pressure or emotionally manipulative conversations could reduce clarity. That phrase became the hinge, emotionally manipulative. He forwarded the results to my attorney. She moved fast, requesting a hearing for a formal injunction against the title's completion until clearer legal advisement was supplied to my parents. The judge approved it. And with that, momentum temporarily slowed. Melissa had no choice but to respond formally. Her lawyer replied with a defensive memo. Our client was acting on expressed verbal wishes by the parents and had no reason to believe they lacked understanding. We responded with logs, evaluations, dated timestamps of conversations, and testimony from a third party. At that point, Melissa attempted to offer a compromise. What if the property stays in everyone's name, but I act as the manager or trustee? On the surface, it sounded reasonable. But once again, it put the control into her hands. If there is one thing my parents always taught us growing up, it was this: shared responsibility prevents greed. And yet now, in their vulnerable years, they were nearly reduced from owners to bystanders. I declined the offer. There wasn't going to be a quiet resolution brokered over personal interpretations. These would follow court-guided process, or not move at all. I didn't want revenge. I wanted protection. I didn't want power. I wanted balance. Melissa's version of fairness was still just another extension of quiet control. The hearing date was set in the days leading up to it. I suggested bringing in a neutral third party to help ease communication. Our cousin Sasha, a retired paralegal known for her calm demeanor, agreed to facilitate a family discussion at my parents' home. Melissa was reluctant, but under mounting pressure from the court notification and public family awkwardness, she agreed. Everyone sat around the living room. Sasha began calmly, "This isn't a mediation. This is clarity. No one is blaming anyone, but we need to understand what happened, not assume." Melissa began her usual explanation. "I filed the deed to help avoid probate when the time comes. We've talked about it before." They agreed. Sasha asked simply, "Did you explain the legal ramifications completely?" Melissa replied, "I explained the key points." Then Sasha turned to my parents. "Do you understand that you would no longer legally own your home? That Melissa would be the sole title holder under the deed filed?" My mother frowned. "I thought it was just temporary paperwork. We still live here." My father looked visibly uncomfortable. "She said it was just to avoid delays." Sasha didn't get emotional, didn't raise her voice. She simply said, "You deserve the time, space, and guidance before signing something that triggers permanent transfer of one of your largest assets." That moment left Melissa silent. Sasha closed the session calmly, recommending that no changes to existing ownership be made until a formal trust was created, with independent legal review and protections for all parties. It didn't gloat. It didn't win. But a small step toward clarity had been made. For the first time, my parents realized that they'd almost signed away control without knowing the cost. And finally, Melissa realized she would no longer be the only voice in the room. The next day, Sasha provided a written summary of the session and emailed it to all attendees, as promised. He printed a copy and kept it in my folder, along with the growing file now marked Estate Safety Active. Meanwhile, the court scheduled a formal injunction hearing with both parties legally represented. He had no desire to see Melissa punished, only that the truth be affirmed by more than just instinct. She had always known exactly how far to push a situation without appearing overtly forceful. She never yelled, never bullied. But her brilliance lay in rushing decisions while everyone was still in emotional fog. This time, at fog was clearing. In court, Melissa's attorney claimed the house transfer was a reflection of years of caregiving and geographical proximity. It presented a friendly portrait of someone simply helping elderly parents prepare for the inevitable. But when questioned about the lack of professional witness signatures, rushed timelines, and the absence of independent legal counsel for the grantors, his narrative weakened. My attorney submitted the mental evaluations, the timing of the holidays with the filing, and other subtle data suggesting at least the potential of undue pressure. The judge acknowledged that while Melissa may have intended no overt harm, the circumstances required a pause. An official notice was ordered, halting any deed transfers unless approved through neutral counsel representing solely my parents' legal interests. It was a quiet ruling, but a powerful one. For the first time, control had shifted back to where it rightfully belonged. My mother cried softly in the hallway after the session. He sat next to her. "I thought we were making things easier," she said. He reassured her, "Doing it right is the only real way to make things easier. This way, you stay in control." She nodded, grateful. A month passed. The legal ice melted into something more livable, not entirely warm, but structured and calm. My parents, now advised by a neutral attorney suggested by the court, began a proper estate plan that reflected fairness, clarity, and legal balance. A trust was drafted that protected their home, preserved their values, and recognized all family members as potential beneficiaries with processes for care management and shared decision-making. Melissa was no longer the only recipient nor the central manager. She was allocated responsibilities proportional to her proximity and care contributions, not more, not less. My role became advisory, not aggressive. He didn't want to manage their affairs for them. He wanted them to be treated as individuals with rights, not as fading figures in a plan made without their full understanding. For the first time, the family returned to something resembling communication. Not full trust, not full harmony, but eye contact and honest answers. Even Melissa, slowly, began to adjust. Perhaps part of her reflex for control came from fear of things spinning out, fear of unresolved roles we were all handed from youth. I didn't excuse it, but I did understand it better. Thanksgiving had created the rupture. The courtroom cured the confusion. But clarity had done something none of us were ready for, it reset the dynamic everyone had grown comfortable ignoring. The house wasn't just a property, it had become a lens. Through it, we saw each other's intentions, fears, and weaknesses. And though frustrating and painful, it gave us something families forget can exist in legal battles, informed peace. The neutral family trust was finalized by spring. Every detail, every clause, every transition term was reviewed with both my parents present and mentally engaged, including sections for healthcare proxies, property rights, and who would mediate in case of disputes. It covered successor roles in case of death, and included notarizations, retirement account coordination, and stipulations for home equity usage. The process was slow. Tedious, even. But my parents finally understood every part of the plan they were signing, not because someone they trusted told them it was a good idea, but because they had real professionals empowering them to understand it. Melissa signed her role acknowledgement without resistance. No longer a sole recipient, she was still instrumental to the plan, but not in charge of the future. He watched her during that final discussion. She wasn't this smug. She was present. Perhaps relieved, maybe even quietly grateful that someone else had taken the stress she once believed she had to carry alone. I didn't expect an apology, nor did I need one. All I wanted was for everyone to stop acting like we'd be a family forever without any structure. Because a structure is freedom when managed honestly. My parents were happier than I'd seen them in years, not because of a house, but because they felt respected. No longer pressured. No longer tools in their children's legal chess games. My brother, quieter than me but consistent, thanked me privately for taking the difficult steps. I wouldn't have known where to start, he admitted. You started by watching, I replied. Then by writing it down. That was all it took. Quiet justice is still justice. And it had made all the difference. It's been 9 months since that Thanksgiving. The house remains unchanged under the trust, but everything else, relationships, communication, respect, has shifted. Every family has fractures. Ours was no different. But the danger never started with conflict. It started with silence and assumptions. Melissa and I still disagree on things. That doesn't change. But she knows now that decisions about family legacy must include more than one voice. I occasionally stop by the house and help Dad with repairs or check in on Mom's garden. They smile more now. There is no tension about who controls what. It's written. It's fair. It's done. Melissa visits too. We speak civilly. Cautiously, but with care. We learn not every power grab is about greed. Sometimes it's fear in disguise. But fear don't justify unilateral action, not when lives, dignity, and legacy are on the line. And while I'll never forget the icy awkwardness of that first announcement, Mom and Dad are signing the house to me, I'm proud that I didn't de-escalate it with aggression, but documented it with discipline. Ultimately, the home stayed where it belonged, and so did the values behind it. Familias break when silence, speed, and secrecy replace trust. Ours bent, but it didn't break. All because someone believed protection was worth more than politeness. Sometimes the best thing you can do, in the middle of emotional chaos, is hit pause, and work the facts before the feelings. Because in the end, legacy isn't who claims the house. It's who earns the right to protect it. 2 weeks later, we were all back in the same room, but this time without the tension. The lawyer sat across from my parents, alongside me, my brother, and Melissa. No raised voices, no performance, just a quiet review of the proposed changes. My father, cautious and focused, read every page of the draft trust, stopping occasionally to ask the lawyer for clarification. My mother nodded along, her expressions calmer than they had been in months. Melissa contributed here and there, mostly logistical questions this time. There was no defensiveness in her tone, something had shifted. Maybe the process had taught her something, or maybe the outcome was simply something she could live with now that her role had been outlined, present but not absolute. In the new draft, all siblings had defined roles. The property remained under my parents' control while they were alive, and contingency measures were clearly documented without ambiguity. Melissa's close proximity and caregiving history were noted in her responsibilities, but authority was capped with checks and balances. No single person could unilaterally make changes or decisions. Financial handling required dual acknowledgement. Disputes went through mediation under named professionals. What stunned me was my mother's quiet remark as she signed, "Now I can finally sleep at night." For years, she had probably felt tugged between speed and silence, dragged between well-meaning pressure and unspoken doubts. What we were witnessing wasn't just the correction of a document. It was a repair of dignity. At the end of the meeting, everyone signed calmly. Melissa's face was unreadable, but her eyes no longer held the tension they once had. It wasn't a win for anyone. But it was peace, transferred across a table in black ink, not as property, but as clarity. When my father signed the final trust agreement, it felt like a decade of confusion ended in that single pen stroke. Melissa, once the person racing ahead of everyone, now walked in rhythm with all of us. There weren't many words exchanged between us that day. Sometimes, healing doesn't require discussion, just space and structure. We agreed to periodic family reviews of the trust every 6 months, handled by a professional, not any one sibling. My parents expressed deep relief, and their health seemed to improve simply from the weight being lifted. Melissa and I maintained a formal but respectful connection. I didn't need an apology anymore. What mattered was that she lost the ability to rush decisions others lived with forever. My brother praised me quietly for standing up early. I would have stayed silent, he admitted. You didn't. He replied, sometimes, silence works like a suggestion. And that's where things go wrong. That Thanksgiving had started as a simple family dinner. It ended up revealing exactly where unspoken control can lead. Things are different now. There is no perfect bond between us. But there is predictability. There are boundaries. The house went under a family trust, evenly considered, lawfully protected, and emotionally explained. And oddly enough, it's not about the house anymore. It's about the blueprint for every decision from here forward. My mom gardens in peace. My dad calls me for tool repairs like old times. Melissa visits too, though less frequently. And when she does, we sit across from each other as siblings, not opponents in a silent contest of expectations. Ultimately, what stayed wasn't the house. It was their right to decide what reached the next generation, and how. And because I asked questions early, with calm, not noise, we avoided a war disguised as good intentions. Sometimes, the real victory is not letting yourself lose, even if the other person wins with a lie. If you've ever felt something like this, please let me know in the comments. I read every comment. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like. Don't forget to share it with someone close to you, they might need to hear it too. And if you want to hear more such real stories, subscribe to the channel. See you in the next story.